Bones looks to clean out the janitor of the 205 division. Can the Fireball Kid withstand the heat of Griffin? And Munoz may pack lightning, but is he ready for thunder? This is the Fight Network's preview of UFC on Versus 2.
Hey there, fight fans. My name is John Pollock. Welcome to our exclusive preview of the UFC on Versus 2 card, set for this Sunday night in San Diego, California. As always, John Ramden will be breaking down this weekend's card in just a few minutes. On paper, this show will provide a number of entertaining bouts and also answer some questions, including how Takanori Gomi responds in his sophomore effort inside the octagon. Will Mark Munoz ascend to the next level? And the main event will tell us whether the future of the light heavyweight division is for real.
UFC on Versus 2 will be headlined by light heavyweight action as the 10-1 Jon Bones Jones looks for his 5th victory inside the UFC when he takes on the veteran Vladimir Matyushenko, with the 39-year-old janitor entering the octagon with a record of 24-4. After a destructive first-round stoppage of Brandon Vera, Jones will try and ascend the 205-pound ladder against Matyushenko, who has gone 2-0 since returning to the UFC last September.
Former IFL light heavyweight champion Vladimir Matyushenko has an opportunity to stop one of the young lions of the division from clawing his way to the top of the heap. Born in the Republic of Belarus, the former national wrestling team member had great success in his early UFC career, beating such stars as pancrase fighter Yuki Kondo, rugged Midwest wrestler Travis View, and destructive Muay Thai practitioner Pedro Hizzo. After losing to Andrei Arlovsky at UFC 44, Matyushenko departed the Las Vegas promotion to fight in smaller events all over the US. The married father of one would go on an impressive run that would have him winning 11 out of 12 times, becoming one of the best 205-pound fighters in the division. After returning to the UFC in 2009, the janitor made a statement with back-to-back wins over fighters close to 10 years his junior. Standing in his way is the new generation of mixed martial arts fighter.
And to beat Jones again, you have to have balls, have to have everything, but and everybody's saying it's a tough fight, but fighting's supposed to be tough.
Many pundits feel Jon Bones Jones is the future of the division due to his explosive movement, killer instinct, incredible athletic ability, as well as a developing, well-rounded skill set. Before entering the UFC, the 23-year-old finished every one of his opponents by stoppage and was destined for the big show. After dispatching Stephan Bonner and more recently Brandon Vera, Jones will be facing the most experienced and decorated fighter of his short career. With a victory over the 39-year-old, Jones will be ready to battle the best the sport has to offer. Meanwhile, a loss for Matyushenko could signify the last number of years on a career spanning more than a decade.
John Ramden is here to break down the UFC on Versus 2 card set for this Sunday night. Let's talk about the main event, John. Jon Jones, this guy has only been doing this just over 2 years, a phenomenal rise in the light heavyweight division and looking to take that next step Sunday night.
And Jon Jones is the blueprint for where mixed martial arts is going to be in the future. You talk about, you go back and look at some of the other fighters, they don't have the athleticism that Jon Jones has, and that's the type of fighter you're going to see in the future. Guys that have solid wrestling bases that continue to progress at a rapid rate and above everything else. The killer instinct and the athleticism. He is the future of mixed martial arts.
And so unorthodox as well. Like, yes, he does have this wrestling background, but you've heard the stories about him watching video games or pro wrestling matches and trying to make that work for mixed martial arts at this level is just insane.
Well, the reason why he can do that right now is because he's 23 years old. He can experiment, and that's amazing for Jon Jones because he has all those tools, and why not use them in the fighting surface? And I think that's going to be the difference in his fight with Vladimir Matyushenko.
Now, a lot of people have been looking at this fight as Jon Jones rising up within the 205 division, and people asking the question, is this guy for real? And I think the Brandon Vera fight answered that question earlier this year.
I think the Brandon Vera fight and the Matt Hamill fight, you know, he lost that fight against Matt Hamill, which he shouldn't have lost. In my opinion, he won the fight. He dominated Matt Hamill, and he dominated Brandon Vera. And you have to look at both those guys have solid grappling bases. And if Vladimir Matyushenko wants to defeat Jon Jones, he's got to do what those guys couldn't do. That means put Jon Jones on his back, use his wrestling skills to try to control the 23-year-old, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do it, or if he's going to be able to do it.
Now moving over to the janitor, Vladimir Matyushenko, who once upon a time headlined an atrocious UFC 33 show against Tito Ortiz. This is his 3rd fight since returning to the UFC. Obviously, his game plan very straightforward here.
Yeah, exactly. Use his wrestling skills because when it comes to the striking game or the submission game, Matyushenko, he's not one of those fighters. He's a bare bones guy. We've seen it in the past. It's ground and pound. And I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it. I think that Jon Jones is too explosive, and he really can dictate the fight because he has those wrestling credentials in addition to his striking skills and his submission game. But Vladimir Matyushenko, I had a chance to talk to him when he was at the MMA Expo here in Toronto, and he knows the opportunity he has. It's no stranger to him. You know, he's faced a lot of the top guys in the world. Tito Ortiz, Andrei Arlovsky, Little Nogueira. So this is just another day at the office for him. He's going to come prepared, and hopefully the fight goes his way.
So will the janitor be cleaning up this Sunday night?
No, it will be Jon Jones taking home the bucket. I think he's going to wipe the floor with Matyushenko. He's just too good in every area, and everybody talks him up. So it's hard to believe that Matyushenko will emerge victorious, but anything can happen.
East meets West in this lightweight contest as 31-6 Takanori Gomi hopes to erase his UFC debut against Kenny Florian from everyone's memory when he touches gloves with 14-3 cardiovascular machine Tyson Griffin, who is also looking for a rebound coming off of his UFC 115 split decision loss to Evan Dunham.
Gomi Takanori! For years, Takanori Gomi was considered to be one of the top 2 lightweights in the world. In the early part of his career, he went on a 14-fight undefeated streak fighting in the long-running Shooto organization. After losing the Shooto welterweight title to Joachim Hansen in 2003, the Fireball Kid challenged top lightweight BJ Penn in the main event of Rumble on the Rock 4, eventually tapping out to a rear naked choke in the 3rd round.
Locked it in. Makaleo's locked in. Is he going to tap? He's going to go to sleep.
Did he tap? Unbelievable. BJ Penn has done it.
Gomi would rebound from the loss to the Hawaiian and win his next 10 straight, stopping the likes of Crazy Horse Bennett, Tatsuya Kawajiri, and former UFC lightweight King Jens Pulver, and Hayato Maha Sakurai, where he captured the Pride Fighting Championship's lightweight title. In 2007, the Southpaw fighter squared off against Cesar Gracie BJJ black belt Nick Diaz, in a fight many pundits call one of the greatest in the young sport's history. After the sale of the Pride organization, Gomi would fight for World Victory Road, where he would lose back-to-back fights in his last 2 fights for the company. In March of this year, the 31-year-old made his UFC debut against top lightweight Kenny Florian in a highly anticipated matchup. Unfortunately for the Japanese fighter, he was no match for the well-conditioned American, who is at the top of his game. Gomi is now paired with hard-working, powerful lightweight Tyson Griffin in a fight destined to be fight of the night. The Extreme Couture standout Griffin has battled and defeated some of the top lightweights in the world and will be in top form when he steps into the cage. The 26-year-old boasts an impressive resume, holding wins over Clay Guida, Gleison Tibau, Hermes Franca, and former WEC featherweight torchbearer Uriah Faber. The former collegiate wrestler has never been finished over his 17-fight career, making him as resilient and durable as the best in the sport. If Griffin can take out the Japanese star, a crack at the lightweight title currently held by Frankie Edgar, a man Griffin lost to in 2007, may be within reach.
John, the Fireball Kid returns to a UFC octagon this coming Sunday. I know, obviously, a descendant of Pride, very near and dear to your heart. Looked very flat against Kenny Florian back in March, eating a lot of jabs in that fight. And I think you're going to see a similar output from Tyson Griffin.
Well, what's unfortunate and not really fair, you know, Takanori Gomi was fed to the wolves. You look at the UFC's lightweight division, Kenny Florian is at the top of that division. So for Takanori Gomi to come into the UFC and have to fight one of the top guys, not very fair, and not a lot of fans look at that and they see his performance and they're not really happy. But they look at this fight with Tyson Griffin, an interesting matchup for Takanori Gomi. He has the wrestling abilities and he has the stand-up abilities. But Tyson Griffin, if he uses the same type of game plan that Frankie Edgar used against BJ Penn, a lot of movement, try to hurt Takanori Gomi's body, try to take the gas out of the gas tank, I think he can emerge victorious because Gomi, not always known for coming in the best shape, and I think Griffin can exploit that.
I think so too, and you look at Griffin, who's just become a cardiovascular machine. It's become routine now for him. 8 of his last 9 fights, going 15.
The only difference in this fight is Griffin's going to have a difficult time taking down Gomi in this fight, and he's going to have a hard time, if he does take him down to the ground, holding him there. What he doesn't want to do is get into a striking exchange with the Japanese fighter, because we've seen in his fights in Pride that he has lethal power in both of his hands.
What did you feel with Tyson Griffin's performance coming this past June at UFC 115 against Evan Dunham, a surprise to some people?
Again, for Evan Dunham, this guy continues to get better and better each and every time, and it just shows you how deep the UFC's 155-pound roster is. There are no more easy fights in mixed martial arts, and there are definitely no easy fights at the 155 division, especially in the UFC. So anybody matched up against anybody is going to be a very, very difficult fight.
So Griffin or Gomi this Sunday night?
I'm going to have to say Tyson Griffin uses his gas tank and his world-class conditioning to get this fight in his favor. I think he's going to be able to dictate the pace, and I think he's going to take home a decision.
So you're saying that Takanori Gomi's second fight in the UFC will backfire?
Yes, I agree. I think his flame will be extinguished.
Two middleweights hoping to propel themselves into title consideration will square off Sunday night with the 24-5 Yushin Thunder Okami meeting the tough 8-1 Mark Munoz. After dropping a unanimous decision to Chael Sonnen last October, Okami rebounded this past March with a TKO victory over Lucio Linares. Munoz has gone 3-0 since moving down to 185 pounds and is coming off of a fight of the night win over Kendall Grove at UFC 112.
Once regarded as one of the sport's top middleweight fighters, Yushin Okami will step into the octagon for the second time this year in hopes of defeating fellow countryman Mark Munoz. Since 2003, Okami has been very active, fighting for a variety of promotions all over the globe. After defeating 13 of his first 15 opponents, the Southpaw would compete in the Rumble on the Rock 175-pound tournament in Honolulu, Hawaii. Other tournament participants included former Strikeforce middleweight champion Jake Shields, former WEC welterweight king Carlos Condit, WFA 170-pound title holder Frank Trigg, and former UFC middleweight champion Dave Mene. In the first round of the tournament, Thunder was paired with future pound-for-pound great Anderson Silva. Unfortunately, the fight was stopped at 2:33 of the first round, awarding Okami the disqualification win. In his next bout, the Japanese fighter would meet Jake Shields and lose the decision to the eventual tournament victor. In 2006, Okami had a busy schedule, competing 7 times throughout the year. In addition to his Rumble on the Rock stint, he made his UFC debut, beating Muay Thai student Alan Belcher by decision. After going 4 straight in the UFC, Okami would get a shot at former 185-pound champion Rich Franklin at UFC 72 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. After dropping a decision to the former champion, the 29-year-old would bounce back 3 consecutive victories over some of the best fighters in his weight class. Okami is faced with one of the most decorated wrestlers in the sport in Munoz. Having recently dropped to middleweight, the 2-time Big 12 champion will rely on his technical grappling abilities to gain an edge over the seasoned Okami, a blueprint middleweight title contender Chael Sonnen used when he defeated Okami in 2009. An impressive victory on Versus could move the winner into UFC top 10 rankings.
John, middleweight action coming up this Sunday night. Yushin Thunder Okami meeting Mark Munoz. Mark Munoz, a very, very big win this past April over Kendall Grove. His ground and pound might be the best at 185.
And that's exactly where this fight is going to take place. I think Mark Munoz has the wrestling abilities. If you come out of Oklahoma State, your wrestling is going to be top-notch. Randy Couture went there. King Muhammad Lawal went there. So you know that Mark Munoz, he's also a 2-time Big 12 champion. He's going to be able to use his wrestling skills to put Yushin Okami on his back and go for the ground and pound, and that's his best option. Yushin Okami, not like Kendall Grove, he's not going to come out straightforward and throw big shots and be aggressive. I think he's going to take his time, and he's going to be very aware of the wrestling abilities of Munoz, and I think he's going to try to keep this fight standing and try to dish out some punishment on his feet.
How does Okami respond if he's put on his back by the wrestler, and Munoz could very much resemble the Chael Sonnen loss?
I think he has to go for submissions off of his back. We saw he locked in a Kimura against Rich Franklin and was very close to finishing that Kimura. So he's got to really fish for submissions if he's forced to fight off his back, and I imagine that's what's going to happen.
I really see a lot of bright things for Mark Munoz in the future. With the wrestling base and the dynamite in his hands, I really think this guy could be a threat at 185. Who are you calling in this fight?
I'm going to have to say it is the Filipino wrecking machine. I think he wins either by decision or by second or third round TKO. I know it's wishy-washy, but Yushin Okami is a tough guy and was considered one of the top 10 for a reason.
The main card Sunday night is rounded out by welterweight action as 14-4 John Howard looks to make it a perfect 5-0 inside the UFC when he takes on the 22-5 Mid-America martial arts product Jake Ellenberger. Howard earned knockout of the night honors at the UFC on Versus 1 card, defeating Daniel Roberts. Ellenberger dropped the split decision in his UFC debut to Carlos Condit and then stopped Mike Pyle at UFC 108 this past January.
John, this is a big showcase fight for John Howard. He's quietly put together 4 wins inside of the UFC, meeting Jake Ellenberger. A very big fight, I think, for both guys here.
Yeah, you talk about a showcase fight. This isn't the fight that was supposed to happen. In steps Ellenberger, and we saw his fight with Carlos Condit. Jake Ellenberger is the real deal. His wrestling skills are there, and if he can take down the athletic John Howard and control him on the ground, I think Jake Ellenberger can win this fight. But Doomsday is a very difficult fighter to deal with. He has skills in all areas, so an interesting matchup for the welterweight division.
Yeah, and I think at this point, Ellenberger has a few more tools at his expense right now, and John Howard, definitely, this is going to be probably the biggest test of his UFC career.
I agree, and again, you have to, when you look at Jake Ellenberger, you just have to go back and look at that fight with Carlos Condit to see all the skills that he has. In addition to his wrestling abilities, he's tough as nails, and he continues to move forward each and every minute of the fight, and that's, I think, going to be the difference in this fight.
Do you see Jake Ellenberger moving forward in his UFC career after this one?
I have no idea. Both guys are really just getting their feet wet in the UFC's welterweight division. So both guys, are taking this fight very seriously because they know what a win means for their career. And I think maybe Jake Ellenberger will win this fight by decision because John Howard's tough as nails.
Don't go anywhere. When we return, it's a look at the preliminary card bouts from this Sunday's UFC on Versus 2 card, featuring Paul Kelly, DeMarcus Johnson, and Brian Stann all entering the octagon. In preliminary card action Sunday night in San Diego, two lightweights with identical records of 10-2 will square off, with Paul Kelly meeting Jacob Volkman, who was successful in his first fight at 155 pounds this past March over Janis Torres. Ultimate Fighter Season 9 finalist DeMarcus Johnson will attempt to solve the 4-1 Matt Riddle, who is a member of the 7th season of The Ultimate Fighter and is now 4-1 inside the UFC. Johnson has had his hands raised in his last two bouts with wins over Edgar Garcia and Brad Blackburn. The 14-6 Sandman James Irvin returns to the much more comfortable weight of 205 pounds after draining himself to make 185 this past March, and will meet the 21-7 Igor Pokrajic, whose back is against the wall with 2 straight losses in the UFC, dropping fights to Vladimir Matyushenko and James Tahuna. Brian Stann moves down to 185 pounds for the first time this Sunday night as the 8-3 former WEC light heavyweight champion meets the 11-3 Mike Macenzio, who hasn't fought since December of 2008, where he lost to CB Dollaway. After debuting for the UFC this past March, 11-1, Darren Elkins returns to the cage this Sunday when he meets 12-0 Charles Oliveira in lightweight action. The Brazilian Oliveira is making his UFC debut with 11 of his 12 professional bouts taking place in his native homeland. And rounding out the card are two 185-pound fighters as 4-3 Steve Steinbeiss, who is on a 2-fight losing skid with his back against the wall, taking on well-traveled 22-5 Rob Kimmins in a must-win fight for both competitors.
John, quickly as we wrap here, some things that are standing out that you're looking forward to on the UFC on Versus 2 event.
Again, it's just Jon Jones. You like to see how this guy progresses and can he take out Vladimir Matyushenko in a spectacular way. I think he can. He did it with Brendan Vera and he did it with Matt Hamill, and I think he's going to do the same thing with the janitor. But don't count out the other fights. Takanori Gomi, always entertaining, and Tyson Griffin, one of the most exciting fighters in the world. So the card's going to be outstanding. I think fans are going to be very pleased.
And you want to see Jon Jones and Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I think if Anderson Silva has a less than spectacular performance against Chael Sonnen and Jon Jones beats Vladimir Matyushenko, match those two up. I promise Anderson Silva will be forced to fight.
It's the next step of Jon Bones Jones' career coming up this Sunday night from San Diego, California. It's the UFC on Versus 2 event for John Ramsey and the entire Fight Network crew and our friends here at Extreme Couture Canada. I'm John Pollock. Enjoy the fights this Sunday night.